I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different than everything else out there. I bring together a new and an experienced investor on each episode, and I let the aspiring investor ask the questions that they need answered. So if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably will have the exact same questions. Now, before we get to this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and that little bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show.
We got Andrew on the line. What do you want to ask him?
So currently I'm in the oil and gas industry. My main concern is, the schedule that comes with the job. My biggest challenge is kind of balancing the W-2, with starting the syndication business. At what point do you think it makes sense to step away from your day job in order to get your business going?
And the answer is it's going to depend on your individual situation, right? Like if you have a spouse that works, significant other that works, it makes it a lot more palatable to say, you know what? Hey, I know people that have never done a deal and they're like, you know what? I'm jumping all in.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe, and I'm very excited for today's show. It's one of our Ask the Expert episodes, and we got two great people on the line with us today. We got Andrew Schutsky and Julio Garcia. So Andrew, Julio, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, man. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Appreciate it, Brian.
No problem. Hey, and Andrew, as is tradition on the podcast, you are going to be up first. So let's talk about you for a minute. Do us a favor. Tell us about yourself.
And I hate doing this part. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
No, I mean, I've always, it's a real estate focused show, right? So we'll kind of gear it around that. But I've spent 20 years building a W-2 career. I consider myself to be successful. I enjoy what I do. I like the people I work with, make good money, all that. But kind of what left me wanting more was, do I want to do this forever? Number one. And number two, is this the legacy I want to leave for my kids? I know we'll talk about my why and all that. And this plays a huge part of that. I've always had a passion for real estate, investing in the single family short-term rental space for the better part of 15 years now. About 2.5 years ago, I came to the realization that building this empire, quote unquote, brick by brick, leaving a legacy may not ever happen. Closing those properties, significant amount of effort, significant amount of capital, resource intensive, all the aspects above. So it's led me ultimately to bigger pockets, like many other people are out there, and a number of podcasts. I found a 60-page thread, which I read through on a vacation. My wife, she was thrilled about that. Soup to nuts, all 60 pages in one sitting. She was freaking out. She's like, "What are you doing? We're on vacation. What are you doing?" I couldn't stop reading it, right? So it's actually
gold, honey. This is absolute gold, man.
I know. I'm like, it's cool. I got a plan. We're gonna make this all work. Little did I know it's a lot more work than it seemed in the beginning. But I was hooked. I read that thread 2 or 3 times over on that vacation. Again, my wife is pissed. She sees why now. But following that, took big action. Joined a mastermind group. Read probably 30, 35 books back to back. Started my own podcast, Crushing Cash Flow, just to learn more and just to interview like some really, really intelligent people. And then from there it took off. I'm lucky enough to be part of my third general partnership now, invested in about 1,100 doors over the past, let's say, really 18 months, including the LP stuff I did in the beginning. So again, kind of playing both roles right now, building the business, still very much in the W-2 and enjoying that space, but wanted flexibility, wanted to leave behind a legacy for my kids. So that's my story in about a 2-minute nutshell.
Nice. So a couple of questions I want to dive into.
Sure.
Now you mentioned you started the podcast. Did you say you started the podcast to learn more? Was that your focus on that one?
Yeah, I guess there was a couple points which it kind of evolved into something a bit bigger. Number one was it's a great place I found to meet, like-minded professionals and to get a, 20, 30-minute conversation going and then share that conversation with other people. Yeah. But it's also really just a powerful point of networking. And, I wanted to put and there's a ton of, as ton of multifamily shows, ton of real estate shows, ton of financial, based shows out there. But what I've learned is there's nothing like you're doing your own, right? You're going to ask different questions. You kind of put your thumbprint and your own retinal, serial number on that. So, which is really cool. Really cool.
It's something I've noticed and anybody who's looking to start a podcast, I do encourage it, but you call somebody up, and I don't know how many times you've gotten this question. It's like, hey, can I pick your brain? A lot of people are just like, you know what?
Yep.
My brain hurts. Too many people have called me to pick it. But you call the same person up and say, hey, you want to come on my podcast, have a 40-minute conversation, and we'll record it and put it out to the masses? Boom.
Yes.
The answer
Yeah, it's a win-win, right? It,
Yeah,
it gives them a little bit of, the more airtime, the better. If you're an entrepreneur, right? You want to get your name out there. You want to make more connections, and it's a win-win for the host. You get to learn as you go, right? And that's I wouldn't call it a hidden secret, but like it's a natural connection point that it's like you said, it's hey, can you spare 15 minutes versus a podcast sounds a lot more meaningful for both parties, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I underestimated when starting this podcast is how much I would learn about the business, and this is going to be episode, I think 260, 261.
Wow.
Don't, but yeah, lots of conversations. So, so that said, let's talk a little bit about, you say you enjoy your W-2. What field do you work in?
I work in technology. So I'm a CIO, or what, for the people that don't know the acronyms, head of IT for a medical device company. And I spent, like I said, the last 20 years building different roles between supply chain, logistics, technology. Always had a knack and passion for technology. And yeah, I invested a lot of time and effort. I enjoy what I do, but ultimately you're not completely in control in these types of jobs. Right. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I've realized, I had a pretty safe and stable government job for a long time, but, as secure as you think you are, a new president in my job, a new president comes in and all of a sudden your job changes, it's like, oh, we're cutting the military by, 15% and pink.
What are you going to do?
Wow. So I watched a lot of buddies leave and whatnot, and I was fortunate, but, yeah, I don't think any W-2 is really super secure, but
that's one of the biggest questions I get from friends and family. We'll go to I was at a birthday party the other day, and they'll always ask like, hey, you're doing it so well on your job, like why do you stress yourself out by building a business on the side? And I'm like, look, to me it's all about two things. Number one, it's all about having options, right? Like maybe you continue on the journey doing the W thing forever, right? And for 20, 30, depending how old you are, forever. Maybe you don't have that option. But why not build things? But why not build yourself some options, some levers to pull 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line that, hey, this is going really well. I'm passionate about it. It's exciting, something you enjoy doing and meeting people. Why not? Why not build yourself options, right? I mean, how can that hurt? Yes, it's more work, it's more effort, but I don't even look at it that way. Yeah, it is effort and it does take time away from other things, but you're building things and it's cool to really build something for yourself and it's cool to leave a legacy behind. That's my number 2.
Yeah. And a lot of goodness there. I mean, I spent, my last 3 years of active duty building a business to get to where it's at right now. But, yeah, it was for me, it was my exit plan. I think a lot of people, eventually want to exit their W-2, but, it gives you so many options, it does. It's like, I mean, and me looking back at my life, I mean, if I were to rewind, 2 to 3 years ago, if I didn't have multifamily as an option, I would still be active duty, and who knows where I'd be right now, is kind of how that would work. Every 2 to 3 years, they pick your family up and move them. And I don't even know where I'd be living right now or what I'd be doing. So yeah, it gives you a lot of options and lets you be in control of, your life essentially. So,
and you can guarantee if you do nothing, to build that empire, to build your next steps, there'll be very limited options for you.
Yeah. It's like one option, cling to that W-2, right?
Correct.
So,
yeah.
So another question, you mentioned you're very deep into technology. What do you do much with technology in your properties? I mean, are you integrating technology into what you do as well in the multifamily space?
Yeah, naturally what I'm finding is I didn't believe this to be one of my unique skill sets, because I figured, hey, everybody knows how to run a portal. Everybody knows how to set up CRM and active campaign. Everybody knows how to build a lead magnet on a website. And I find that, between that and having some structure and project management background, like you bring a very unique skill set that's much needed to most partnerships. In fact, I took that for granted.
Yeah.
And now I'm finding that be a differentiator for myself. So maybe those listening out there have another unique skill that you're probably overlooking. You're assuming that, oh, this is common, it's a dime a dozen, but it's probably not.
I know how to pay somebody to set up my active campaign, and I know how to pay somebody to do a website for me, but those are skills that I did not come to the table with, and we've paid pretty hefty price to get those things set up with third parties. So I mean, there's a lot of skill sets, and fortunately yours translate, directly to certain aspects of the business, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I like to joke around, one of my last jobs in the Marine Corps was shooting airplanes down. There's no direct translation, in for that.
Hey man,
so,
maybe a property's not going well, you just need to put it out of its misery.
well, cool. So you kind of talked a little bit about your reasons, and
Yeah.
what I'd like you to do is distill those down if you can into what I like to call the big burning why.
Mm-hmm. So number one, first and foremost, is just leave behind a legacy. I always like the quote, live the life you want your kids to become, right? So if you're setting a great example. For instance, my kids see me reading every morning. They see me doing this type of stuff. Like, Dad, your job's over. Your day's over. Like, why are you still on camera? Why are you still in meetings? And I'll explain it to them like, hey, like all these cool things you like to do and these trips you like to take, and you want daddy to have flexibility, 5 years down the line, you wanted me to join more of your activities and stuff. This is my purpose. Like, I want to leave behind, set a great example, and leave behind a legacy that can hopefully live for multiple generations. And doing that with just a W-2, even at an executive level, like I'm doing now, it's possible, but I don't want to live like in a tent and live so frugally I can't enjoy life either. Right. So that's primarily my reason. It's pretty simple, man. I love to leave behind a legacy. I want to do something different than just live a corporate 9 to 5 every day. Even though, again, I could be perfectly happy doing that. I wanted something different. I wanted to leave behind an example. I wanted to live the life that I want them to live, right? And I want them to see that for multiple generations, ideally. Pretty simple.
Yeah, super simple. Live the life you want your kids to live. I mean, that's a lot of wisdom in that. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. When I was just thinking back on, how my parents lived and how I adopted a lot of what my parents did just because that's what I saw every day. So I'm not sure that's what they wanted, but that's what ended up happening. Good point. I'm going to be thinking about that for a while now. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
But
sure.
While I'm still, crunching down on that, let's talk about some of the deals you've done. So pick your first or your favorite or your most recent.
Yeah.
And walk us through one of the apartments that you guys have purchased and tell us.
Yeah. We've got one under contract now, and I won't talk too many details, right? Because it's still under wraps. And of course it's like, maybe it's a, I don't know, fallacy or whatever, like bad luck or something to talk about until before you close. But so it's a 228 unit property. So by far the largest one I've been a part of. Even being a small part of that, I'm really excited. And it was really, you build a reputation as you start this business, right? One, I started my first one. I started off, hey, I'll do anything. Like here's my corporate background. Here's the skills I bring to the table. I've got great connections. Like I'll do anything. And I started out doing many different roles: asset management, helping to find deals, helping to structure the construction behind the things. And I'm burning myself out. Right. So I realized what I really like doing is connecting with people. The podcast is a big part of that. I love networking with like-minded, technology and engineering professionals who want a better way of life. So I kind of become the investor relations guy. And the way I found this third deal, the 228 unit, was by reputation, right? Like, hey, I manage these properties. I got my name out there. Word starts to spread, referrals come out there. And then, one person from my mastermind group was like, hey, I'd love to have you on the team. I love what you bring. I love the energy you bring to the table, even though I know you can't raise $10 million or anything. You don't have to, that's okay. You don't have to be the master of everything, but my goal is to, hey, focus on one thing, especially while you're doing two jobs. Focus on one thing. For me, it's the investor relations, maybe help with a little bit of the capital planning and the I enjoy like the DIY projects anyway. So I enjoy doing that at scale, right? So pick one or two things you're really good at. You can always expand down the line, but don't make the mistake I did in my first property, which was be all hands and be everything to everybody. You're not going to please anybody doing that, and including yourself.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned earlier, I mean, you burn out when you try to do everything too. So,
yes.
Definitely a team sport, and you got to learn to pass the ball.
Yep.
Basically what it comes down to. So, well, cool. Hey, thanks for sharing that. I hope all goes well with it. And
thank you.
It's a nice sizable little deal there, but
it is. Yeah. For me, I'm grateful for any opportunity, but when something of scale comes along, you're of course all ears, right?
Yeah. And it's a lot of fun, and a lot of people like multifamily for the scalability of it. It doesn't, for example, our largest property is 167 units. Our smallest is 16. We are not spending 10 times as much time on the 160 as we're spending on the 16, right? But the profits scale, and the work doesn't quite scale. We're probably
Correct.
spending, 5 to 8 times more, but we're not spending 10 times more. So
yeah, great point.
Scalability there. But anyway, that's it. What's next for you?
So, I mean, I've got, I think it's always important. Everybody has goals in mind and where they want to take their business, regardless of whatever you can control. I mean, or can't control, but I like to focus on things I can control, right? So I continue to build partnerships, continue to build my investor network. And I've got kind of goals set for, how many deals I'd like to do per year. And I'm a quality over quantity guy, especially while I work in 2 jobs. But even without that, I'd still, 2 or 3 deals a year. An increasing size, maybe complexity over time will get me where I need to be in 10 years. And that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. 2 to 3 a year, and just
Yeah.
Look for quality over quantity. I think that's huge. A lot of people are in a race to get a certain amount of units or a certain amount of deals closed. And I think you need to have the quality over quantity mindset, especially in today's market. So,
and I'm glad you brought that up, because my metric was never, number of doors. Oh, of course it's going to translate into that, right? But my primary thing is I love to help 1,000 investors invest over the next 10 years. So maybe 100 a year, or adding 100 a year, or whatever the numbers works out to be. Yeah. I like to think of them first, right? Because I am an investor first and foremost. I invest in all the deals, and I want to help as many of them, busy professionals who are interested in diversifying or learning about real estate. I want to help as many as I can. And that number for me right now, I had 10,000. I'm like, let me back it down to 1,000 for now. It's more manageable. I'm not doing crowdfunding, right? Let me get to 1,000 and then it's extrapolate. So
right. Yeah. And that's a nice even number to pick, a couple of zeros on the end. And that's actually my number. We have our educational program is, I want to help 1,000 people find their first deals, or actually the way I have it worded is help people find and close on 1,000 properties. So
that's awesome.
That's awesome. I like that number. Good,
that's
nice,
cool.
Nice hairy goal for us to both chase. So
definitely love it.
Well, that said, we're going to shift gears and bring Julio on. So Julio, welcome.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
happy to be here.
Yeah. Good to have you on. And so do us a favor, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been in the oil and gas industry for about 10 years now, doing single family rentals kind of part-time. The last 5 years or so, we've acquired about 3 to 4 single family homes. Mm-hmm. And but yeah, we're moving along, trying to get syndication full time. I'm trying to step away from the oil and gas industry. Mostly because of the time, you know what I mean? It takes, at the day job and everything. I'm looking for a little bit more freedom. So
yeah, absolutely. Now, is that why you started buying your single family portfolio? Is for the same reason, or is this something new that's come later?
No, it's actually why we started with the single family. That was kind of the plan to acquire, enough single families to kind of take over my monthly expenses, which is what a lot of investors, their plan is at the start of it. But yeah, we noticed that it's a little bit harder to scale that, single family homes. It might take a little bit longer than we're anticipating. So we definitely wanted to make the jump to something a little bit faster.
Yeah, I remember many years ago, and this is probably 6 years ago. I had a handful of single family homes. And I actually pulled out a spreadsheet and I said, okay, the last single family home, this was the purchase price. This was the down payment. This is how much is cash flowing. And I projected that out. I'm like, if I can buy 2 per year, if I can buy 3 per year, how long is it going to take me to get to my goal? And the answer was way, way too long. I had to figure out, I'm like, man, God.
Same here, man. Same
Whoa.
Here. Yeah.
I think with the sample home that I started with, it wasn't in a high cash flow area. I was going to need 60 single family homes to reach my monthly cash flow goals. But yeah, I think a lot of people who get into single family eventually make the same realization that we made, is that we got to figure out a way to scale faster, because this is going to happen. So, so looking to get into multifamily now. So here's a question that I love to ask everybody. What is your motivation for getting into multifamily? What's your big burning why?
My motivation. So I'm a big family guy. Get a little deep here. One of my worst fears was, I have 2 daughters. So waking up one day and my daughter's being all grown up and not having any memories to show for it, and with being in oil and gas, it takes up a lot of your time. So, I just like I have the strong desire for the freedom that, investing in multifamily offers.
Yeah.
Another thing is my parents are kind of getting, they're getting aged, and so they're kind of going into retirement, and they never really had any retirement plan while they work. So kind of want to help them out as well. And I just like genuinely like helping people, I like working with kids. I grew up playing sports, so I really want to, help out any way I can. I like, coaching kids, and either that is football, baseball, softball, whatever it is. So I kind of just want to be there, especially for my girls when they start growing up, be at the softball games and at the volleyball games, things like that. You know what I mean? So it all comes with the freedom.
I coach 2 basketball teams right now, one 10 and under and one 6 and under, because I got a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. But
Wow.
one thing you said just kind of hit home with me. I mean, I was active duty for 20 years, and there was a couple year span where it was, deployment. And one of my daughters was really young, and not too long ago, my wife said, "Hey, do you remember when she used to do this?" And I started really, really thinking, and I have very few memories of her as a really little girl, and that's part of that. That was part of my why as well, is I didn't want to, I realized that I did have big gaps in my memory. They're called deployments of my kids growing up. But really, really hit home with me on that one. So, hopefully we can help you. If we can do a little bit to help you today, I think that's my goal. So
For sure.
yeah,
Yes, sir.
that's
Appreciate it.
We got Andrew on the line. What do you want to ask him?
All right. So,
Fire away.
Andrew, appreciate you, first of all, for taking the time.
Of course. Happy to help.
So currently I'm in the oil and gas industry. My main concern is, the schedule that comes with the job. It doesn't allow for a set routine, since I'm on a swing schedule. Currently I'm switching from, days to nights weekly. One of my biggest challenges is kind of balancing the W-2, with starting the syndication business. At what point do you think it makes sense to step away from your day job in order to get your business going?
I mean, that's a great question. That's something I've asked, when I was exploring this a couple of years ago. I've asked that to many people, and I've had them ask me that. And the answer is it's going to depend on your individual situation, right? Like if you have a spouse that works, significant other that works, it makes it a lot more palatable to say, you know what? Hey, I know people that have never done a deal, and they're like, you know what? I'm jumping all in. Like I'm going in from day one. I know other people that have been doing this for 5 years in parallel. They're making great money on both ends, and they're still like, I'm still not quite comfortable. And it depends on how flexible your situation is. Like I'm lucky and fortunate enough to work from home every day. I have a pretty fluid schedule. Like I work a lot with Europe, so my mornings are pretty busy. Afternoons, not as bad. So I can work around that. But if I had to do, second or third shift somewhere, I'd probably be looking to accelerate things, but as long as things remain flexible, everybody's situation is different. Like for you, it sounds like, hey, it's not as predictable. I can't really set up calls with investors and talk to brokers with that type of schedule. You've got a couple of options. One is I look for a different W-2 in the meantime to keep the lights on. Or two is I say, screw it and go all in and jump in. And hey, maybe I've got a spouse that can support me for now, or I can downsize my standard of living. That could accelerate. So you have a couple of levers you can pull. But it's up to, everybody's comfort level as to like how fast is too fast and how much do I need to have built? Like how much, like I wouldn't recommend jumping in your first month or anything like that. But like once you've got systems established, you've got some leads and follow-ups, maybe you've done a deal or two. I would say at least do a deal or two to make sure you like it. Because I can tell you, I think there's a misconception that like, hey, it creates all this freedom, and it does, but it's still a significant amount of work. I can't tell you how many nights of sleep I've lost thinking about, oh crap, what if the roof leaks in this property? I mean, it is intense in terms of your mental, processing power required. And there is a significant time commitment, but it does buy you flexibility as to when you get the work done. I think that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, I think for me there was a clear point, and it was very obvious that now I enjoyed what I did for a long time. I mean, I wouldn't have stayed in the Marine Corps for 20 years if I didn't, right? But I started multifamily as my exit strategy, but there came a point to where I started looking at my W-2 as impeding me from doing what I wanted. Now, if I had the ability and the flexibility to leave at that point, that's what I would have done. But for me, there was an obvious time where it was like I starting to get a lot of traction. We were closing deals. We were, and my W-2 was impeding me. And in that case, that's where I probably should have jumped. In my case, in order to get a retirement pension for the rest of my life, I had to stay in for another, year or so. But I think for a lot of people, the answer becomes obvious once you start working both ends. Once you start working the multifamily, and I agree with what Andrew said, make sure you get 1 or 2 under contract and it's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then the answer should be obvious as to when.
Appreciate that. For new syndicators starting out, what advice do you have when looking for co-GPs? Do you have like a laid out system, or it's more of like verbal connection and getting to know that person?
Yeah, I've kind of started with the trial and error approach, probably like many other people, right? And I'd say the first thing you want to do, and this is a lesson learned for me, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, is number one, know the one thing you want to start working at and get really good at, whether you're the investor relations guy or you want to work with brokers. You want to be, hey, I'm a great project manager. I've got the background in construction. I know how to run a property. Know the one thing you bring to the table. And then as you start networking, which I think that it takes work and time, but it's not hard, right? It just takes effort to connect with different people. And I look at it like speed dating, right? You're coming in clear with like what I bring to the table. You're listening for things that maybe you're not good at. Because again, I talked about, hey, trying to be the asset manager, trying to be the deal finder. If I were clear on that in the beginning, things could have went a lot quicker, right? If I say, hey, I want to be the IR guy, I can help with this and that, but that's what I'm sticking to. Like later on, I'll expand. Yeah. You're gonna weed out a lot of partners right away, but you're also gonna attract people. Oh, this guy really knows what he wants to do. Like I love that, and maybe I'm looking for that skill set you bring to the table. So you can cut these 45-minute speed dating sessions down to maybe 10 or 15 minutes, because it's all about like, I like the flipping cards analogy, right? Whether investors or finding co-GPs and partners, you're going to flip some 2s and 3s and 4s before you hit the jacks, queens, kings, and aces, right? Yeah. So it's a numbers game. I mean, I still look for, my ideal state is to find 1 or 2 groups I want to work with long-term, like 10 plus years, and not be just doing one deal at a time. But I think you can just put yourself out there and know what you want, what the one value prop you bring to the table to start out with. Be really crisp about that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, networking is absolutely key. Get in front of more and more people and know what you want. I've told people many times, my strategy before the call, we were talking about the best ever conference, but my strategy at conferences like that or any networking session is I know what I want going in. Yep. All right. And if I'm at a networking session, a physical networking session, if I start talking to somebody, I'm talking with them for 3 to 5 minutes and I realize this is not who I'm looking for, I will very politely find a way to excuse myself and go look for the person that I'm looking for. So that's my networking mentality is, you have to, as Andrew said, you have to know what you're looking for first, and then be very deliberate about finding it. And then once you find somebody, if there was a way to test drive a relationship, do everything you can to test drive a relationship, because you don't know what it's going to be like working with these guys until you actually work with them. So don't go enter an LLC with somebody you've never done a deal with. I know people have done that and typically it doesn't work out well.
Wow.
Okay. So it's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
But why not de-risk any situation you can by like Brian said, get the reps in, do a deal or 2, and that was great advice I was given earlier on, and I'm glad I had that.
For sure. All right. Switching gears a little bit. How soon should a new syndicator, do you think, have their investor portal or website up and running?
So 2 different questions. So the website, I'd say immediately. So once you've gone through the process of knowing, who is your investor avatar, if you're going to build a brand, once you've got clear on who you're going after, who you're targeting, who you're marketing to, there's no reason to hold back on the website. The portal, I'd say, you don't really, that's money down the drain. To me, I'm frugal as much as I can be. That's money down the drain. You don't need to be investing. even on your first deal, especially if it's a smaller deal, I did it the manual way for 2. And now that we have it on the 3rd, it's awesome to have, but it's by no means, unless you're doing 50 investors right away, which probably won't, you don't need that. That's not a necessity. In fact, if you join a more experienced co-GP, if you use something like Syndication Pro, they can invite you as a co-sponsor. You can use that tool for free anyway. So that's what I've learned. Like I was thinking the same thing. Oh, I should go buy all this stuff. I'll go buy CRM. No, you need a website, you need an email address. Ideally you have some type of CRM, I'd say would be a priority, like an active campaign or something like that. So you can keep track and organize your contacts, have a follow-up process, have your drip campaign, educate your investors. I can't emphasize that enough. Have that in place. The portal and stuff can come later. You don't need all that stuff at once. My advice, but Brian, do you agree with that or anything?
Wholeheartedly agree. And I will say I delayed way too long getting that website up. I was probably a couple of months into trying to raise capital for the first deal before we had any semblance of a website. And it was my partner that did that. But one of the things that helps legitimize you in a lot of people's minds is a website. I mean, it's crazy. I kind of had the attitude that, I'm not going to wait until the website's up to start doing things, but I delay way too often. And I got the question many, many times, hey, well, do you have a website? Can I get information from your website? Or, hey, and something just to keep in mind is, your website's going to be open 24/7, so people at 2:00 in the morning can say, yeah, I talked to that Brian guy. He told me about his website, and, tap it in. So I would say don't delay any more than possible getting the website up. 100% agree. And then same thing with the investor portal. I would say delay until you get your first deal. And if you can piggyback or co-GP with somebody else who's paying that expense, because it is a big expense.
It is. Yeah, sure, for sure.
But I would say right around the time you get your first deal, if it's a sizable deal, get the investor portal. If it's a small deal with friends and family, you can probably do without for your first, maybe your second.
Yep, agreed.
All right. And lastly, Andrew, are you currently acting as a sponsor or equity partners for any future deals with other syndicators?
Yeah, in fact, like I mentioned, I've kind of dialed in investor relations. I've chosen not to keep continuing with brokers right now. Maybe I'll explore that later on. But no, my primary objective right now is to help other syndicators get deals closed, to help market them, to bring my investors to the table, and to help with planning. Right, you got to know again what you're bringing, what value equation you want to bring. But I don't enjoy as much the back and forth. Looking at 200 deals. I'd rather invest my time finding partners who do a really good job at that and have the time and energy to devote to it. So that's where I landed, and that's why.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with being the person that looks at the 200 deals to find one, but it's got to be something you're good at. And it's got to be something you like doing, And the problem for me is I feel like I do like doing it and I am pretty good at it. It's just, you can't do everything. So you got to pick one. No, and I'm glad you said that. I'm the exact, I've got 2 degrees in math. Can I underwrite? Yeah, I can underwrite. Do I know how to work spreadsheets and manipulate numbers? 100%, but when it comes down to it, I'm also good at raising capital. I'm also good at, relations. But for me, it comes down to, I'm good at this part. I'm good at that part. What do I want to focus on? And that's how I answer the question, is like, what do I enjoy more? And I'll find people to fill in the gaps everywhere else.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess, Julio, your question for you, what are you good at and what do you enjoy doing?
So currently right now I like numbers, don't throw any algebra or anything at me, but I kind of get a kick out of underwriting deals. I like, touring properties. I have kind of I've rehabbed a couple of my single family homes that I have in my portfolio. So that's something I enjoy doing, kind of overlooking, construction and all that good stuff. So, right now I'm looking to kind of get away from the oil and gas. So, hopefully here in the future, I'll have a little bit more time to to be kind of boots on the ground, Yeah. That's what I'm working towards. Yes,
I was going to say, you're lucky enough to live in a hot spot for multifamily anywhere in Texas, but especially Houston. I have a couple of the buddies. That's an advantage in itself, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. You beat me to it. Houston's a great place to be boots on the ground, because there's a lot of people who are trying to get into that market, and a lot of people who are investing from out of state into any Texas city right now.
Yeah. Agreed.
For sure.
Don't sleep on that one.
Yeah. All right, Julio, you mentioned with your last question that it was your last question. Do you have anything else you want to put us to the test on?
No.
All right.
I'm starting off. I'm sure there's a bunch of people, that want to start syndicating. What's as a starting syndicator, what's one thing that you guys would recommend that would accelerate the first deal?
Good. Andrew, you take that first.
I'll hit that one. I'd say pretty straightforward, not easy to do, but just get your name out there. But keep doing podcasts like this. Go to meetup events locally and nationally. Attend webinars if you can. Network with like-minded professionals. Join a tribe of your choice or a mastermind group. Just getting your name out there, because whether you're going after investor relations, I see a free shameless plug for Brian. I've heard great things about the group. I mean, groups like that are great. I mean, I know he's gaining a lot of momentum. There's a lot of choices out there, but join something. I mean, don't overanalyze it like I've done in the past and run, crunch numbers and spreadsheets for 2 years. Take action, go out there, get your name out there, have fun. And then you can refine your process as you go, but just take the first step. Go connect with people.
Yeah. I would double down on that and say, if you want to accelerate, the fastest way to accelerate is to find a partner that can help you. You mentioned you have time issues, so find something that you can do and you can perform, and find a partner who needs that aspect. Right. So, and we talked about this, a week ago, but when my schedule flipped similar to yours, where I was like days one week, nights the next week, that's when I started really focusing on, things like the social media presence for the company, the podcast and things like that, because, I knew I couldn't record anything these 4 days, but I knew I had openings on these 4 days when I had my days open. So, it's just a matter of figuring out what you can do with your constraints and finding a partner that can help you out with everything else. And that's, in my mind, the fastest way to accelerate is to find somebody who can multiply your efforts.
Fully agree.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, guys. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. Well, anything else from you today, Julio?
For me, no, I appreciate the time. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, I very much thank you for coming on, and we'll wrap things up with one final question for each of you. Andrew, you get to go first. How can our listeners learn more about you?
So really simple. I don't like to give away 7 different points of contact and confuse everybody. Go to our website. Everything kind of funnels through there. It's investwithredline.com. Our company's name is Redline Equity. We've got tons of education. We've got blogs coming out every week. We've got a free 8-part learning series. Whether you're a first-time investor or a 10th time or 20th time investor, you'll probably learn one thing at least. And that's my goal, is to come away with one big learning. So website, investwithredline.com. Check us out there. You can find our podcast through there. You can find the blogs through there. You can find our learning series through there. Everything goes through there.
All right. So
Pretty
one-stop shop, investwithredline.com, and we'll have that in the show notes for anybody who's interested. Awesome. Julio, same question for you. How can listeners learn more about you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I don't have a website, but I am on LinkedIn.
He will soon.
Yeah, will. Absolutely. So
yeah.
All right. We'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. And since you're probably not the only Julio Garcia in the world, if you're interested in connecting with him, definitely hit those show notes up and grab the right Julio Garcia. So
appreciate that.
There we go. Yeah,
there may not be many Julio Garcias in oil and gas in Houston, so that might be something to look for. Yeah.
Probably at least a dozen though. So
it narrows it down. Yeah,
I'm sure.
Sounds good. Well, hey, thanks guys for coming on the show today. I had a great time, learned a little, and hope you guys did too.
That was a blast. Thanks for having us, Brian.
All right.
Thank you, man.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community, the Tribe of Titans, yet, you are missing out. So get yourself 30 days free by clicking the link below in the description, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.